In this video, we will tap into the movie Avatar released in 2009. We will discuss the movie story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide the reviews and personal reactions. Let's begin with the movie story. Jack Sully, played by Sam Worthington, is a Marine who was paralyzed in battle. His twin brother Tommy had been training for 3 years to control an avatar on Pandora, a planet humans have invaded hoping to get on Unobtainium, a precious metal. Jack is required when his brother dies to take over his avatar, a hybrid of the DNA of a human and a Navi, one of Pandora's ingenious people. He is transported to Pandora via cryo chamber and dismarked using an oxygen mask since humans cannot breathe the air on Pandora. When Jack arrives at Pandora, he meets Dr. Grace Augustine and a fellow Avatar driver named Norm Spellman. Grace is pissed that Jack is there, saying that she needs Tommy, who had trained for this. However, she puts Jack in this link, which puts his brain in control of the Avatar. Once he awakens in his Avatar body, he immediately disobeys the orders of the doctors who want him to ease into things. He runs out of the facility, joyful that he has the use of his legs. Grace meets with Parker Selfridge, who seems to be the mastermind behind the invasion. The military leader is Colonel Gorge. Grace is upset that Parker keeps trying to nose his way into the Avatar program, which is her department. Jack, Norm, and Grace take their avatars over the wall of the facility in a helicopter flown by Tori Chacon. She drops them off their devastating mission, and Jack wanders away from the group. Here, he runs into a dinosaur-like creature who nearly attacks him. Grace tells him not to shoot it as the creature's skin is too thick for bullets. However, a different creature arrives and starts to attack Jack. Grace screams at Jack to run, which he does. He only escapes by jumping off a cliff into a huge waterfall. However, now he is separated from the group. Grace, Norm, and Trudy fly over until nightfall trying to find him, but have to follow orders not to be out at night. Grace fears Jack will not survive the night alone on Pandora. Jack is wandering around the forest at night where a ton of different creatures are wandering around. We see Natri, a Navi, perched on a branch above him. She is about to shoot him with an arrow when a little sea anemone looking thing lands on her arrow. This seems to be a sign and she does not shoot. Later, Jack finds himself in the middle of the pack of the panther-like creatures that attacked him before. Eventually, he tries to fight them off and is about to lose when Natri runs over and starts killing the creatures with her bow and arrow. Jack thanks her profusely, but she is very upset about having to take the life of these innocent creatures. Jack follows her through the forest, asking her to teach him how to defend himself. She is going to refuse, but suddenly those animal creatures are all around them again. Thousands of them perch on Jack's body and Natri looks stunned. She takes him to a clearing where a bunch of Navi rides up on Pandora's version of horses. They want to kill Jack since they know he is one of the sky people, a human in an avatar's body. However, Natri says he was chosen by Eva, their deity. They agree to bring him back to their home tree where the final decision will be made by the leaders. At home tree, Jack meets Natty's parents, Moat and Atokan, who are the leaders of this clan of Navi. They are angry at Netri for bringing Jack, who repeats that there was a sign from Eva. Jack says all he wants to do is to learn, and they agree to let him stay on the condition that Netri teaches him everything. She complains about his responsibility, but her parents' word is final. They all go to sleep, and Jack wakes up in his human form, back at the base. Grace and Norm are relieved that his avatar is safe and grill him for details. They are impressed that he survived the attack of the creatures and has somehow gotten in with the Navi. They want him to use his position to try to find a diplomatic solution. However, Colonel Quartish also meets with Jack and tells him to use his position to find out their weaknesses, so the military can know how they can beat best the Navi. He says that if Jack does this, he will see to it that Jack gets an expensive surgery to regain the use of his legs. There is a montage of Natri teaching Jack different things, including the language of the Navi and how to ride the horses. The braids that the Navi wear intertwine with the reins of the horses, so they are linked through their minds. Jack keeps falling off his horse and Natri makes him try again and again. Jack is getting more involved with the clan and convinces them to let Grace Avatar visit, which she does. Natri is also trying to teach him how to make a clean kill. Once he finally does, while saying a prayer over the corpse, she says he is ready. She takes him to the lair of her Beshi, a Petrodactyl like bird that she can also ride using the connection of her braid to his. Natri says, unlike the horses, each Navi rides only one Banshee for life and Jack has to find his. The two of them, along with some other Navi, climb up a huge structure in the sky to get to where the Banshees live. Natri tells Jack that he will know what Banshee is meant for him, since all the others will fly away in fear, but his will try to kill him. Jack finds a Banshee that stands up to him and tackles the Banshee to try and make the first connection. Jack is nearly killed but finally makes the connection and takes his first ride. He says in voiceover that horses are not for him but he was made to fly. Natri joins him on her own Banshee and they exchange many loving looks. Suddenly, they are attacked by the Lanopatrix, a huge dragon-like creature that is easily 5 times as big as a Banshee. They fly down to the ground and somehow shake off the Lanopatrix. Every time that Jack's avatar goes to sleep, he wakes up in his human form. When he is human, he makes video logs talking about what he has done on Pandora. One set of logs he keeps for Grace and another he sends to Colonel Corches. He doesn't send one to Corches for a while, so the Colonel is getting suspicious that Jack's head is not in the game. Jack says he just needs more time before they attack. He wants to find some sort of a diplomatic solution. Back on Pandora, Natri takes Jack to a scared area where the Navi can make connection to Eva and can hear the memories of their ancestors. Natri says that by bringing Jack there, she has solidified his position in the clan and he will officially be made one of them. She says he can choose a woman and make suggestions as to who he might pick. He says he has already made his decision, but this woman has to choose him in return. Natri says she has, and they make love. Natri says that doing so is the presence of Eva has mated them for life. They go to sleep. Natri wakes up in the morning to sound of a bulldozer coming through the trees. The humans have come in to take down the trees of Eva. Natri is screaming with anguish and trying to get them to stop. Jack is still asleep and is not in his link bag at the base. Grace forces him to eat before linking again. He finally links at just the right time before they are run over by the bulldozer. He waves his arms frantically to try to get the bulldozer to stop, which it does for a split second before starting again. Colonel Cortis is controlling the bulldozer. Jack jumps on the machine and breaks the camera so they cannot control it anymore. Colonel Cortis looks at the video and realizes that this is Jake. He realizes Jack has switched sides. Back at Home Tree, everyone is distraught that Ava's valley has been destroyed by the humans. Grace is there as well in Avatar form. The Navi are angry with them for bringing the Sky People there, although they say they had nothing to do with it. Suddenly, Toti, a Navi that has never really welcomed to Jack, realizes that Netri and Jake have met it. Grace is stunned at the base. Colonel Cortez storms into the link area and breaks Grace and Jack's links. Grace yells at Parker saying they need more time. Cortez and Parker want to attack Home Tree, which sits on top of Pandora's biggest unobtainium deposit. They agree to let Jack and Grace link up again to try and get the Navi out of Home Tree. Jack and Grace go to Home Tree to try to find and convince them to leave, since they know Colonel Cortez and Parker will not wait to attack. Jack admits he knew from the beginning they were planning this, and Nettie starts to sob, saying she trusted him. He tries to tell her that everything changed. He fell in love with her and Pandora, but she screams at him to leave. Grace and Jake are tied up as the military starts to arrive. The aircraft starts to attack with bombs. The Navi retaliate with arrows that have no effect. Muat, Nettie's mother, unties Grace and Jake, saying if they are truly Navi, they need to help them. Trudy is in one of the helicopters but leaves, saying she did not sign up for this. Eventually, the bombs cause Home Trees to crack and collapse. Nettie's father is killed in the battle and the military retreats. Once again, Cortez breaks Grace and Jack's links. They are screaming that he is a murderer, and they, along with Norm, are placed in a prison cell. Trudy brings the prison food but pulls a gun on the guard and frees the three of them with the help of Max, a doctor in the Avatar program. As they are leaving, Jack tells Max to stay behind as he needs someone he can trust on the inside. Trudy starts up her helicopter and is detected by Cortez, who bursts out into the hangar and starts shooting. The four of them barely get off the ground. They are going to the floating mountain where they have another link station, and they cannot be tracked as they are too high up in the atmosphere. As they fly, Jack realizes that Grace has not shot and is bleeding profusely. Once they arrive at the link station, Jack decided that he has to regain the trust of the Navi. He takes his Banshee and decided to try and make a connection with the Leonopatrix, who would not be expecting this. He succeeds in training the creature and fly it to the Tree of Soul, where the Navi have relocated. Once they realize he has trained the beast, they are in awe of him. Nettie says she was afraid of her people but is not anymore. She says, I see you, which is the highest statement of love between the Navi. It means they see into one another's souls. Jack returns the sentiment but quickly says that he needs help as Grace is dying. Grace and her avatar are both brought to the Navi, where Mott performs a ritual that would put Grace's consciousness permanently into her avatar so she would not need to be linked, and she would survive this way. Despite all their pleas to Eva, her injuries were too great and she dies. Jack then gives a speech that he knows the Sky People are planning to attack again, and they must stand up and fight. They have to enlist all the other Pandora clans, which they do. Back at the base, Quartet sees via a radar that their numbers are slowly growing to over 2000 Navi. Max sends a video message to Jack, Grace, and Trudy that they are planning to mobilize and attack the Tree of Souls. Jack is alone of the Trees of Soul where he makes a plea to Eva to help his people, the Navi. Netri comes up behind him and says despite his efforts, Eza does not take sides. She only protects the balance of life they embrace. The final battle begins with ground troops coming in. They notice that something is getting closer and closer on the radar. It is the Navi on their horses. In the air, the military's plans are planning to attack when they are attacked by Navis on Banshees. Jack and Netri are among these soldiers, while Norm is on the ground. The Navi on the ground are being decimated as they are going up against guns with bows and arrows. Those in the air are causing some damage but not enough. Trudy is attacking Quart's plane with her own helicopter but is hit and her helicopter explodes, killing her. Norm is also shot on the ground and awakened in his link station, gasping for air. Netri is attacked by a plane and falls to the forest floor but survives. Jack is trying to coordinate with his friend but gets no reply. Netri is on the ground, hiding but surrounded by humans. Jack screams at her not to attack as she will certainly be killed. She does not listen and prepare her bow to fight to the death, but suddenly the humans stop. They have detected something else approaching on the radar. Suddenly, all the creatures from the beginning, the dinosaurs and panther looking creatures, charge the humans who start being killed in droves. Ned screams with joy that Eva listens to Jack. Jack attacks Quarter's plane, but Quarter somehow escapes by getting into a huge robot-like shell that humans can control in battle. He falls to the forest floors and starts fighting with Jack man on man. They are right next to the link station where Jack is still linked to his avatar. Cortez hits the link station which causes a small hole to form in Jack's bed. Since humans cannot breathe Pandora's air, his human body still links to his avatar starts shocking. Jack in his avatar form is still fighting but is pinned by Cortez, who is about to kill him when Nettie appears and shoots two arrows right through Cortez's chest. Once he is dead, she runs over to Jack, who has fallen unconscious due to the trauma his human form is going through. Back in his human form, he stumbles out of his link station but cannot reach the emergency oxygen mask due to his paralysis. He falls to the floor and stops breathing. Nettie tries to awaken his avatar form but cannot. She then runs into the link station and puts the oxygen mask on Jack's human form. He wakes up and is able to breathe again. She cradles him in her arms and they both say, "I see you." Jack, in his human form, gives his last video log. He says the humans were sent back to Earth and only a few, Norm and Max, were allowed to remain behind. He says that he cannot be late to his own party and sign off. All at the Tree of Souls, Moth and Nedry are performing the same ritual they tried to perform with Grace. Jack's consciousness is permanently put in his avatar form and he opens his eyes. The Avatar franchise holds three seemingly unbreakable box office milestone records and it's granted to make more. James Cameron's Avatar franchise has managed to hold three seemingly unbreakable box office milestone records, and the series is almost granted to make more. The Avatar movies have been a box office phenomenon, with Avatar, The Way of Water both being massive commercial hits that have smashed all kinds of records. James Cameron still has plans for several more Avatar sequels, meaning that the series is far more over. Because of this, the records that Avatar currently hold are far from the only one that the franchise could have by the end of the life. 2009 Avatar is famously the highest grossing movie of all time with James Cameron's sci-fi epic famously being a massive hit with audience and critics alike. Since it took 13 years for a sequel to come out, many fans of the franchise were surprised to see the Avatar The Way of Water was almost as big of a success as its predecessors, with its currently being the third highest grossing movie of all time. Both movies have made over $2 billion, and with more Avatar films on the way, the franchise box office legacy is far from over. Avatar is the fastest franchise to make $3 billion, $4 billion, and $5 billion at the box office. Avatar The Way of Water helped Avatar to secure three major box office records, with it being the fastest film franchise to reach the 3 billion, 4 billion, and 5 billion markers at the box office. Avatar managed to reach each of these milestones with only two films, something that no other franchise has managed to do so far. 2009's Avatar made 2.92 billion at the box office, and 2022's Avatar The Way of Water made 2.32 billion at the box office, with the combined total gross of both movies putting it over the $5 billion mark. 15 different movie series have managed to make over $5 billion, but Avatar is the only one to have reached his goal with only two movies. After all, this milestone would only be possible if at least one of the two movies is another series made over $2.5 billion. And the only non-Avatar film to do this was Avengers Endgame, which has the second movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. No other series has come close to beating these box office records, and it is likely the Avatar will soon perform more impossible to beat feats. Avatar 3, 4, and 5 will help the franchise keep setting box office records. Avatar The Way of Water managed to be a box office success comparable to the first movie over a decade after the release of the first Avatar, showing that the franchise has legs that could continue to help it at the box office in the future. Avatar 3, 4, and 5 have all been confirmed, and with much shorter wait times between sequels, it is likely that these films will continue the franchise box office success. Even if they don't make over 2 billion, these sequels could help further cement some incredible records. The next three Avatar movies could help the franchise become the quickest movie series to reach other markers such as 6 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion, or beyond. If each Avatar movie continues to make over 2 billion at the previous one state, the franchise will have reached at a minimum 10 billion by the end of the series. While this seems unlikely, it also seems unlikely that Avatar Way of Water would do so well, with the upcoming Avatar Fire and Ash being a true statement to how the series will continue. Will any other franchise ever tie Avatar's 3 billion box office records? It will be incredibly difficult for another movie franchise to ever tie Avatar's box office record of getting 3 billion with only two movies. But there is a possibility it could happen. 2023 introduced two possible contenders, the first of which is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. The Super Mario Bros. Movie made 1.36 billion at the box office, meaning that a sequel would just have to make 1.64 million to tie Avatar. Barbie is another candidate. Barbie made 1.46 billion during its run, meaning that Barbie 2 would just have to make 1.54 in order to reach the coveted 3 billion mark. It is always possible that a future franchise could appear that managed to surpass Avatar's record, but based on how things look right now, Avatar's record seems to be pretty solid. Avatar, released in 2009, might become the first movie to set a crazy box office records. Almost 13 years after its initial release, Avatar might hit set a new crazy box office record with its upcoming re-release on 23rd September 2022. In 2009, James Cameron pushed the boundaries of modern filmmaking with Avatar bringing life to the world of Pandora in a stunning CGI-laden production that was unparalleled at the time. Popular in both US and Chinese markets, Avatar quickly became a box office success, overtaking James Cameron's own 1997 hit Titanic as the highest grossing film of all time, encouraging Cameron to produce four Avatar sequels, including Avatar The Way of Water, which is set to release December 2022. Much like Avatar 2009, Avatar The Way of Water looks to involve cinema pushing contemporary filmmaking technology to its limits. Avatar The Way of Water has been largely filmed using underwater motion capture inside a 90,000-gallon tank, something completely revolutionary to the industry. While the box office future of Avatar 2 is uncertain, with the time gap between the original and the sequel being problematic, it is relatively certain that much like its predecessors, the film will be a visual marvel. Ahead of Avatar 2's release, Avatar is returning to the big screen, which may well push it into wild new box office territory. Currently standing at $2.84 billion gross, Avatar only has to earn $153 million in its re-release to be the first film ever to reach $3 billion worldwide, hitting a crazy box office milestone. Avatar's re-release was announced by Disney at CinemaCon and will be presented with remastered visuals and sound. This re-release therefore encourages a rewatch of the movie with its remastered visuals, while there's also a good chance that Disney will add a sneak peek to Avatar The Way of Water into the re-release plans to draw a bigger crowd. This is not the first time Avatar has been re-released, with Cameron's movie also being re-released in 2010 with 8 minutes of new footage. Avatar was initially re-released again in 2021 in China, earning over 35 million and reclaimed the crown as the highest grossing film of all time after losing it to Avengers Endgame in 2019. This bump in sales for Avatar also came during the pandemic era when many films failed to find an audience, meaning now that regulations are being lessened, Avatar can return even stronger than before. Avatar is also being re-released on September 2022's slate, which does not currently have any big title attached to it, allowing Avatar to an otherwise blockbuster free market. The success of these two previous releases shows that there is still a prominent market for Avatar and its sequels, which have a collective budget of $1 billion. While Avatar reaching over 150 million with its re-release may seem a scratch, there's a current uptick in cinema sales for blockbusters that point towards its success. Films are once again achieving box office numbers in the current cinematic landscape, with Spider-Man No Way Home scoring over $1.8 billion and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness demonstrating strong pre-release in a post-pandemic market, meaning it seems possible that Avatar could also fare well. Avatar may have been first released over 12 years ago, but it has never become redundant. And as the best-selling film of all time, it seems right that it should be the first film hit the $3 billion at the worldwide box office as well. Avatar is still the highest grossing movie of all time, and here's why. Who would have thought a movie without an already pre-established cinematic universe, not based on decades of books or comics, with revolutionary politics at its core, a film in which US soldiers are triumphantly killed? Who would have thought it would be so successful? Directed by James Cameron, Avatar holds many box office records, including the title of the overall highest grossing film In 2009, it was the first film to earn more than $2 billion and concluded its original box office run with gross revenue of $2.74 billion. The film also broke the record for the largest domestic opening weekend for a film not based on the franchise and the largest opening weekend of an environmentalist film. Domestically, it led the box office for 7 consecutive weeks. This was the longest consecutive lead since the 15-week run by Cameron himself with his 1997 film Titanic. Worldwide, the film held the number one box office spot for 11 consecutive weeks, surpassing the previous record of 9 weeks, which was held by Pirates of the Caribbean's Dead Man's Chest. In 2019, the massive box office streams lost its title of the highest grossing film to Avengers Endgame, which had a gross of $2.79 billion. However, a 2021 re-release of Avatar in China led to the film reclaiming its title and positioning itself with a cumulative gross of $2.84 billion. In anticipation of the release of Avatar The Way of Water, 20th Century Fox re-released Avatar in theaters on September 2022, where it took the number 3 spot with $10 million, beating out other major re-releases like Spider-Man No Way Home and Jews worldwide. The re-release of Avatar brought in $30 million, making it the biggest movie at the worldwide box office and bringing its already legendary intake to a lifetime gross of $2.92 billion. Update December 7, 2023. December is Avatar month as it marks the 14th-year anniversary of the release of the first film and almost a year since the release of Avatar The Way of Water. James Cameron's track records. James Cameron boasts a widely successful and extensive resume. The name recognition and appreciation of a director can do a lot to help popularize a movie. Cameron's film career was kick-started into success with his 1984 movie The Terminator, both written and directed by Cameron. The unique sacrifice story captivated and entertained an audience whose world was and still is becoming increasingly integrated with technology. It is with this film that Cameron established himself as an incredible, competent world builder and creator with strikingly original ideas. His subsequent films from the 1986 lineup until his most recent ones such as Alita Battle Angel all demonstrate his ability to create novel, relevant and moving stories. Beyond original storytelling, which is an incredible feat in and of itself, James Cameron is able to effectively translate his ideas onto the screen. Many other great stories, usually in the form of novels or comics, find a lackluster representation when adapted for cinema. This could be because the medium was not originally meant for the screen, or perhaps it is the fault of an incongruence between the original creator and the hired director. Sometimes it is simply just impossible to convert a sci-fi idea into a visual medium. Whatever the case is, Cameron is always able to efficiently create an original story made solely for cinema, something that is becoming more and more uncommon. For him, the translation of the story to the movie is not as structured as just creating a screenplay or script. Cameron is involved in every step of the process, and with a blockbuster film like Avatar, there are a lot of process. Cameron prepared the actors before shooting by sending them to Hawaii to experience a tropical environment and had them meet with a professor of plant psychology to understand methods a botanist may use. He paid a linguist to develop the Navi language and worked closely with designers and illustrators on 3D renderings, paintings, and sculptures. Additionally, Cameron had new technology built specifically for this film. Cameron is ambitious and determined not just in the epic masterpiece but also in anticipation of three additional sequels creating 5 movies in total in a process which is sure to take more than 2 decades. With Cameron not having directed any non-Avatar related films for the past 24 years and the foreseeable future, it seems as if the director is primed to dominate the 2022s with his blues alien vision, groundbreaking special effect and technology. The movie was originally supposed to begin production in 1997 and was set for a 1999 release. However, Cameron postponed this, feeling that the technology was not yet developed enough to tell the story as he envisions. Leading up to the principal photography in 2007, James Cameron and Vince Space developed a modified 3D camera to capture their footage, the Fusion camera system. Additionally, Cameron utilized innovative and new visual effect techniques, which include a larger motion capture stage and an improved method of facial expression capture technology. During the motion capture process, Cameron used a new visual system that placed the actor in a virtual environment and could display reaction in real time. Cameron has said that the film is 60% CGI and 40% live action, and yet the combination is rather seamless. The enormous amount of data being stored and transferred led to the creation of a new cloud computing digital asset manager created by Microsoft. The company responsible for the visual effects in avatars is Vata Digital, based in New Zealand. Vata used a massive server farm consisting of 4,000 HP servers, 35,000 processor cores, 104 terabytes of RAM, and 3 petabytes of storage. Cameron has previously pushed the boundaries of digital technology with Abyss and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but with Avatar, the filmmaker took things to the next level, and that work was visible on the screen. The dedication paid off as the visuals truly were a tool to enhance the story and fully immerse the viewer into it. 3D helped boost Avatar's tickets. It cannot be understated how much 3D played into Avatar's box office success story. While 3D had seen a resurgence in 2009 with releases like My Bloody Valentine, 3D Monsters vs Aliens, or Charismatic Coral, it was Avatar that showed audience a new way of using that technology. It brought viewers into the world of Pandora, and it was such a breathtaking sight that they wanted to keep returning to see it, as they would not get the same sensation when the movie finally arrived on home video. 3D ticket prices are more than standard tickets, so that certainly help Avatar box office. Even the recent re-release found that 90% of people who went to see it over the weekend chose 3D. Avatar created the modern 3D trend, and while some films have used it effectively, while most quickly tried to cash in, Avatar remains the gold standard for what audiences imagine as a 3D cinematic experience, a much needed metaphor and a powerful story. Throughout the movie, Cameron deploys the use of metaphor and symbolism to drive much larger theme. One of the most obvious one is the relationship between humans and their environment. In Avatar, we see humans destroying the natural world and stripping it of its resources, without any regard of the native population or the ecosystems in which they live. The humans in the film are motivated by greed and constant gratification. In 2009, as well as Tuesday, ecological degradation consonant with many viewers. Additionally, the theme of imperialism is present throughout this film. Avatar subverts the alien invader trope, with humans being the ones with the advanced weaponry going to a new planet to conquer it, and the Na'vi in danger of seeing their way of life destroyed. The attempted eradication of the native population is clearly shown and invokes the idea of colonization. The use of terms like shock and awe in the film describe the technology of overwhelming displays of force used in modern occupation and warfare. Canadian author and activist Naomi Klein has even written a book on the subject about how greed exploits disaster and profit from it, especially with the help of various militaries. The theme of corporate interest overriding the needs of the planet and people has only gotten more topical since 2009. Although the world we see throughout the film is factitious, the familiarity with realistics theme creates a deep emotional response. By the end of the film, through the work of the protagonist, the wrongdoers meet there and the good guys win, inspiring audience to participate in the very real struggle against climate disaster, war, greed, and xenophobia. Avatar is a cinematic spectacle, a visually and technologically innovative film from one of the most successful directors alive, and one which takes viewers on a thrilling, emotional journey through powerful motifs and empathetic characters. Audience will get to travel his journey again and again as sequels are sure to dominate the box office once again. Welcome to the Avatar decade, setting up a promising franchise. Speaking of the Avatar decade, a big reason why audience flocked to theater back in 2009 was because of the long 12 years gap between Titanic and Avatar, knowing that whatever the film was that kept him away for so long had to be special. Well, 13 years after Cameron managed his incredible feat with Avatar, its long awaited first sequels, Avatar The Way of Water was released. Fans ran to movie theater to reunite with their favorite 10 feet tall blue aliens. While some criticized the sequel for being too similar in plot to the original, most loved the way that Cameron expanded upon the universe he set up in Avatar, introducing a new Pandora biome and countless new creatures of all shapes and sizes. Whether audience liked it or not, box office results managed to reach close to the heights of the first film. Avatar The Way of Water is now the third highest grossing film of all time with a worldwide lifetime gross of $2.32 billion. And Cameron is not losing any time shooting the next sequels. Apparently, Avatar 3 and 4 are already in the works due to the amount of post production they will require, but also to avoid what is dubbed the Stranger Things effect, whereby young actors age quicker than their characters. It is a risky move to invest such incredible sums to make two movies at once, but if anyone can do it, it probably Cameron. Now, almost a decade and a half after the release of the first Avatar film, audiences are still carving that cinematic spectacle that James Cameron has provided for over 4 decades. What began as a single one-off sci-fi film, Cameron has now set to form into a massive sci-fi generational epic. The movie runtime is 162 minutes, directed by James Cameron, and the movie is also written by James Cameron. Avatar becomes the first film ever to pass $2.9 billion at all-time global box office. Director James Cameron Avatar has become the first film in history to pass 2.9 billion at the box office, thanks to a 2-week re-release in over 40 markets ahead of December long-awaited sequel Avatar The Way of Water with $18 million domestically and another $39 million from overseas territories. The latest re-release has pushed the film's global haul to 2.90 billion dollar. The film's running domestic total now stands at nearly $780 million, the fourth largest of all time behind Spider-Man No Way Home $814 million, Avengers Endgame $858 million, and Star Wars The Force Awakens $936 million in 2015. Adjusted for inflation, Avatar's domestic total stands at $916 million according to box office tracking website The Numbers. This is the fourth time that the film has been re-released in theaters following its record-breaking original run that began in 2009. Avatar was not the biggest film out of the gate, debuting to 77 million in its opening weekend, which was the second biggest of the month of December at the time, behind I Am Legend. But the science fiction epic deployed incredible legs over the next few months, eventually overtaking Cameron's own Titanic to become the biggest film of all time, both domestically and internationally. They say that the franchise has had no cultural impact, but the sustained interest over the last decade proves otherwise. A special indexed edition was released in theater in 2011 and grossed nearly $45 million worldwide. A similar re-release target at Apex Priorities took place in 2020, followed by a China-specific re-release in 2021. The film was a major hit in the Middle Kingdom back in 2009, but the pendulum has swung all the way back in the decade since its release. In that decade, China became the world's largest movie market, attracting major Hollywood films to cater directly to the local audience. But striker sensation in the post-pandemic era have limited the number of imports that are allowed to be exhibited here. Thanks to the latest release, Avatar also extended its lead as the biggest film of all time at the global box office. It briefly sat at the top spot to Endgame before reclaiming it with the China re-release in 2021. Endgame's global total stands at 2.79 billion. The top 5 all-time list also include Titanic 2.2 billion, The Force Awakens 2.6 billion, and Avengers Infinity War $2.4 billion. Starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, Michelle Rodriguez, and Sigourney Weaver. Avatar is set in the 22nd century and tells an epic story about colonization and revolution. The films utilize state-of-the-art visual effects and introduce industry-altering possibilities for 3D exhibition. The sequel will welcome new cast members such as Cliff Curtis, Eddie Falco, Jamie Calumet, Kate Winslet, Michelle Yeoh, Brandon Cowell, and Vin Diesel, slated for a December 16 release. The Way of Water was shot simultaneously with Avatar 3. Two more sequels have been announced, which means that over the course of the next decade, the original film will get several opportunities to pass 3 billion at the box office. Avatar, the movie released in 2009, movie reviews. Cameron retains his crown. Watching Avatar, I felt short of the same as when I saw Star Wars in 1977. That was another movie I walked into with uncertain expectations. James Cameron's film has been the subject of retentive advance push just as his Titanic was. Once again, he has silenced the debaters by simply delivering an extraordinary film. There is still at least one man in Hollywood who knows how to spend 250 million or was it $300 million wisely. Avatar is not simply a sensational entertainment, although it is that. It's a technical breakthrough. It has a flat-out green and anti-war message. It is predestined to launch a cult. It contains such visual detailing that it would reward repeating viewing. It invents a new language, Navi, as Lord of the Rings did, although mercifully I doubt this one can be spoken by humans, even teenage humans. It creates new movie stars. It is an event, one of those films you feel you must see to keep up with the conversation. The story set in the year 2154 involves a mission by US Armed Forces to an Earth-sized moon in orbit around a massive star. This new world Pandora is a rich source of a mineral Earth desperately needs. Pandora represents not even a remote threat to Earth, but we nevertheless sent in ex-military mercenaries to attack and conquer them. Gung Hu warriors employs machine guns and pallet armor over ships on bombing runs. You are free to find this an allegory about contemporary politics. Cameron obviously does. Pandora harbors a planetary forest inhabited forcefully by the Navi, a blue-skinned, golden-eyed race of slender giants, each one perhaps 12 feet tall. The atmosphere is not breathable by humans and the landscapes makes us pessimize. To venture out of our landing craft, we use Avatar's Navi, look like grown originally and mind controlled by humans who remains wide up in a trance-like state on the ship. While acting as Avatar, they see, fear, taste, and feel like Navi and have all the same physical adeptness. This last quality is liberating for the hero Jack Sully, Sam Worthington, who is a paraplegic. He is being required because he is a gigantic match of a dead identical twin who an expensive avatar was created for. In avatar state, he can walk again, and as his payment for his duty, he will be given a very expensive operations to restore movement to his legs. In theory, he is in no danger because of his avatar is destroyed. His human form remains untouched in theory. On Pandora, Jack begins as a good soldier and then goes native after his life is saved by the Lethe and brave Netri. He finds it is indeed true as the aggressive Call Miles Cortes berefted them that nearly every spice of life here wants him for launch. Avatars are not paid for Navi flesh, but try explaining that to a charging 30-ton Rhino with a snout like a hemorrhage shark. The Navi survive on this planet by knowing it well, living in harmony with nature, and being wise about the creature they share with. In this and countless other ways, they resemble Native Americans like them. They tame another species to carry them around, not horses, but graceful flying dragon like creatures. The scene involving Jade capturing and taming one of these great beasts is one of the film's great sequences. Like Star Wars and Lord of the Ring, Avatar employs a new generation of special effects. Cameron said it would, and many doubted him. It does. Pandora is very largely CGI. The Navi are embodied through motion capture technologies convincingly. They took like specific persuasive individuals yet sidestep the airy uncanny valley effect, and Cameron and his artists succeed at the difficult challenge of making Nedry a blue-skinned giantess with golden eyes and a long, supple tail. And yet I'd be damned. At 163 minutes, the film doesn't feel too long. It contains so much. The human stories, the Navi stories for the Navi are also developed as individuals. The complexity of the planet, which harbors a global secret, the ultimate warfare, with Jack joining the resistance against his former comrade. Small, graceful details like a floating creature that look like a cross between a blowing deadlian seed with a drifting jellyfish and embodies goodness are astonished floating cloud island. I have complained that many recent films abandon storytelling in their third act and go for wall to wall action. Cameron essentially does that there, but has invented well in establishing his character so that it matters that they do in battle and how they do it. There are issues at stake greater than simply which side wins. Cameron promised he'd unveil the next generation of 3D in Avatar. I am a notorious skeptic about this process and needless distraction from the perfect realism of movies in 2D. Cameron's attraction is the best I have seen and more importantly one of the most carefully employed. The film never uses 3D simply because it has it and doesn't promiscuously violate the fourth wall. He also seems quite aware of 3D weakenings for timing the picture and even with the film set largely in interior and a rainforest. There's a sufficient light. I saw the film in 3D on a good screen at the AMC River East and was impressed. I might be awesome in true IMAX. Good luck in getting a ticket before February. It takes a hell of a lot of nerve for a man to stand up at the Oscar cast and proclaiming himself king of the world. James Cameron just got re-elected. Avatar 2009 is pretty great even though its story feels very common. Whether it's due to disbelief, overhype, or that product having been oversold, I think we have all been guilty of calling something widely praised or beloved overrated. When Avatar first came out, people were perhaps slightly hyperbolic when it came to praising the somewhat allegorical James Cameron sci-fi epic. I was a teenager when it was re-released, and I remember once standing in line at a blockbuster as people were over the moon excited to own the film on physical media. I had not seen it in theaters, and after having seen it, I struggled to really be thoroughly overwhelmed by it as other people seems to have been. I really enjoyed the Leona Lewis songs and I thought it looked very good. I recognized that it was a solid picture, but when I finally saw it, I do remember thinking something along the lines of is that what all the fuse was about? It was not the best thing since sliced bread, which is certainly felt like it had been sold as. Since its release on physical media, Avatar has sort of fallen into the background as superhero films and the eventual returns of Star Wars took center stage in pop culture and entertainment. But after having had its re-release be postponed several times this year's Avatar will finally have a sequel. With the imminent release of Avatar The Way of Water, I thought it was finally time to revisit the original film, which has gotten be relegated to being used as an entertainment joke or punchline. Even though that's hardly fair. I admittedly love the SNL skit about Ryan Gosling's characters being obsessed with how the title font is supposedly Leslie Dawn, but some part of the central joke is that it's funny that anyone would be obsessed with a film like Avatar, which came and made a lot of money but went away without much of a cultural imprint being left behind. I guess the thing about the font being lazy must also somewhat be related to the other common criticism of Avatar. How familiar the basic story is, which I will get to later. If you have somehow landed on this review without any knowledge or memory of Avatar, then allow me to briefly sum up the premise. Feel free to jump to the next if you don't need a recap. The film takes place in the 22nd century on a moon called Pandora, far away from Earth. People of Earth has colonized the distant moon, which is inhabited by these tall and blue humanoid alien known as the Navi, for the purpose of mining the mineral onobetnium. After his twin brother dies, Jake Sully, a pragmatic marine, is sent to Pandora to replace him. Humans have created these Navi human hybrid known as Avatar that are genetically linked to certain individual whose consciousness can be temporarily transferred to the hybrid avatar that can be controlled remotely. Colonel Meyer got a response take to infiltrate the native tribes and get him the information he needs to complete the mission. But as Jake meets the Navi and experiences the moon and the culture, his worldview changes and he starts to build an affectionate relationship with one of the blue aliens named Netri. So, how do I look at the film now more than a decade since its original release? Well, Avatar is frankly gorgeous. It succeeds in visually constructing the opposing group in the film. The vivid colors of nature are smoothing and energizing, especially when compared to the lifeless blues and grays of the human base. Even today, the movie looks amazing. I think
The teaser trailer for the sequel short of reveals how much technology has moved since 2009. But even though the teaser trailer for the upcoming sequel features richer and better texture human than the original film had, we need to remember that even though Avatar was groundbreaking.
At the time of its release, in 2009, James Cameron gave the world a technical marvel of a film that at the time escapulated all that was grand about blockbuster spectacle filming. Avatar was and still is the time of writing the highest grossing movie of all time, yet with that accolade came its fair share of criticism. It was a ragging success at the time of release, but like with most popular films, eventually the pendulum swings, it loses its shine, and the decimate voices grow louder when something grows as popular as Avatar. Eventually, it became cool to be different, and people starts to like hating on it. Since it's a film best seen on the biggest screen possible, a lot of people didn't opt for a rewatch once it hit the home market, causing the good feelings and memory to fade, the criticisms to grow over louder, eventually causing some viewer to develop an almost impressed reaction to ever liking the movie in the first place. The sequel to the film have notoriously been in production for over a decade. The landscape of cinema has changed a lot since then. In preparation for the release of the first sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water, the film has re-released on the silver screen as a huge fan with fond memories. I was eager to revisit this story and the vibrant world of Pandora, yet was it how I remember. Set on mythical moon, the jungle is filled with dangerous animals. The characters narrowly avoid getting hurt. These scenes might be scary for younger viewers. These are multiple battle sequences where characters are killed by explosion, bows and arrows, gunshots, wounds, or blunt force trauma. Corpses are shown, and some characters die on screen, although there is minimal blood involved. Avatar 2009, there is not a single frame in Avatar that doesn't look stunning and authentic. From the heavily militarized human mining colony to the beautiful forest planet Pandora that contains a rare mineral that the human want to Pandora's indigenous Navi population who are not too happy about the human presence. In order to better understand the Navi, the humans have developed the means to mentally copy special ground avatar bodies that look like the giant wide-eyed opaque-skinned Navi locals. Sam Worthington plays Jack Sully, a Propabic marine who adopts one of the Avatar body in order to infiltrate and gain the trust of the Navi. Describing Avatar as passionate in space would not be too far for the mark as Jack's relationship with the Navi people follows the white man assimilate into Native American Indian culture narrative of many post-colonial films. However, Avatar is more in tune with Calvin Costin Dances with Wolves 1990 rather than films such as Michelle Mann's The Last of the Mohicans 1992 or Terrence Malick's The New Bird 2005, which both contained a slightly more complex exploration of racial and cultural identity. Avatar is still a white man saves the day film and it is occasionally guilty of some rather off moment when depicting the Navi as noble savage types. However, at the core of Avatar is a very simple yet sincere environmental and anti-colonial message that moves all doubt about the film's good intentions. Besides, such scripts are just so incredible minor compared to the sheer beauty and exhilarating visuals at the forefront of Avatar. The scenes depicting the forest and floating mountains of Pandora are truly wondrous. The Navi and the avatars look incredibly realistic, and the action is exactly the sort of things audience
have come to expect from writer-director James Cameron. Cameron has long been at the forefront of setting new standards for high-quality spectacle cinema with films such as The Terminator, Aliens, and Terminator 2: The Judgment Day, rightly regarded as classic of the science fiction action genre. With Avatar, Cameron not only sets new standard for the use of computer-generated and imagery special effect, but also the use of 3D photography, which has a full depth of field and is integral to the texture and sensory impact of Avatar. Cameron has made no comparisons with Avatar from a technical point of view, and it is the time it will come to be regarded as a benchmark film.
Avatar 2009 movie directed by James Cameron, starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, and Sigourney Weaver. At the highest growing modern film of all time, Avatar has quite a reputation with some of the best CGI ever seen. It's hard to not be impressed by such an incredible work in preparation for the upcoming sequel Avatar The Way of Water. I went ahead and rewatched the first movie, originally released in 2009 and re-released in summer of 2022. With a runtime of nearly 3 hours, the movie is able to introduce and efficiently develop many characters and storylines in a single movie. The story follows a disabled Marine veteran, Jack Sully, who is headed to a distant moon called Pandora in the year 2154. This beautiful moon is home to an array of interesting biodiversity never seen before by humans, including an ingenious species called Navi. The Navi are intelligent 10-foot tall blue skinned humanoids that the humans had been interacting with during their stay on Pandora, which was primarily for the allocation of resources. Because of the poisonous atmosphere and harsh conditions, humans developed Navi human hybrid called avatars. Humans could then remotely link to the avatars and explore the worlds. Jack's brother, a scientist, has originally been headed to Pandora, but after his ultimately death, Jack took his place. He found that through the avatar body he could escape his human disability, which bound him to a wheelchair, and finally run again. As the story progresses, Jack interacts more than the indigenous tribe, interrogating himself into their society and becoming one of them. He falls in love with the chief's daughter, Nettie, who teaches him the way of our people when the humans come to destroy their home and people. Jack decided to halt with the Navi, defending his new family against the invaders. Upon my first viewing of the movie, I was astonished by the visual effect, which involved the creation of incredibly new motion capture, filming technique, and rendering capabilities. Everything from lush alien forests to cloud covered floating mountains look so realistic that it's like they had filmed on location. Interestingly enough, the concept of the movie had been developed by director James Cameron back in the 1990s, but he believed that the technology available at the time was not sufficient to achieve this vision. The majority of the movie's praise comes from the astonished next generation visual effect, which some critics have gone as far to say this is the evolution of entertainment. The film's plot is an allegory for the invasion and colonization of a foreign power onto a native people. The first instance of this that comes to mind is the invasion of the lead of indigenous tribes in America. The story was executed very well, and the devastation left by antagonist on the beautiful world leaves you siding with the Navi and agree toward the military, which is exactly what the movie aimed to do. Additionally, passive-aggressive behaviors and dialogue between military leaders and economic development directors sets viewer on edge and further defines them as the villains of this story, directly contrasting with the aggressive minds of the scientists. The sequel to this amazing movie, Avatar The Way of Water, is set to release in December and is one of the most anticipated movies ever due to the massive release gap between the first movie and the second. With the first movie being re released more than a decade period, many fans, including myself, are itching to see what director James Cameron has planned for this sequel in the 13 years since the release of the first Avatar. Cameron has stated that he has five Avatar movies planned out but waited to start production of a sequel until he knew that this first movie was a hit. The plot of The Way of the Water is still under wraps and we don't find out for sure until its release. But from the trailer, it appears that we'll exploring more of Pandora, mostly focus on the oceans and the tribes of Navi that live in that ecosystem. The aquatic environment has what held back production because Cameron wished to have the same stunning visual as his 2009 film but lacked the technology of underwater motion capture technology once again adopting to wait until this kind of filming was developed. Avatar is a revolutionary movie that was a year ahead of its time. The movie is best remembered for its astonishing CGI and creating and species and environment so realistic that it's hard to believe that it was created on a bank of computers. The plot is like a roller coaster with so many twists and turns that you have no choice but to brought along for the ride. The film expertly avoids the tropes of alien being the villain and instead focus on a bigger picture as set by a fan of the movie. Avatar has more than heroes and villain could offer. It's the story of a habitat, a generation, and a survival. That's why the film is special. After a dozen years later, James Cameron has proven his point he is king of the world. As commander in chief of an army of visual effect technicians, creature designers, motion capture mavens, stunt performers, dancers, actors, and music and sound musicians, he brings science fiction movies into the 21st century with the jaw dropping wonder that is Avatar, and he did it almost from scratch. There is no underlying novel or myth to generate his history. He certainly draws deeply on westerns, going back to the vanishing American and his particular dance with wolves, and the American tragedy in Vietnam informs much of his story. But then all great stories build on the past. So, after this story, many years ago, he discovered that the technology he needed to make it happen did not exist. So, he went out and created it in collaboration with the best FX mind in the business. This is motion capture brought to a new high where every detail of the actor performances get preserved in the final CG character as they appear on the screen. Yes, those eyes are no longer dead holes but big and expressive, almost dominating the wide and long alien faces. The movie is 161 minutes and flies by in a rush. Repeat business, Jubit, Titanic level business. That level may never be reached again. But Fox will see more than enough pauses worldwide to cover it bit on Cameron. But let's cut to the case. A fully believable flesh and blood romance in the beating heart of Avatar. Cameron has never made a movie just to show off visual pyrotechnics. Every bit of technology in Avatar serves the greater purpose of a deeply felt love story. The story takes place in 2154, 3 decades after a multinational corporation has established a mining colony on Pandora, a planet light years from Earth. A toxic environment and hostile natives, one corporate apparatchik called the local Blue Monkeys forces the conglomerate to engage with Pandora by proxy. Humans dwell in oxygen trances cocoons but move out into mines to confront the planet. Hostile creatures is hugely fortified armor and robotics are as Avatar. The protagonist, Jack Seeley, played by Sam Worthington, is a disabled former Marine who takes his late twin brother place in the Avatar program, a shot of bone thrown to the statistic community by the corporation in hopes that the study of Pandora and its population might create a more peaceful planet. Without any training, Jack suddenly must learn how to link his consciousness to an avatar, a remotely controlled biological body that mixes human DNA with that of the native population, the Navi. Since he is incautious and overly curious, he immediately rushes into the fresh air to a native to throw open Pandora's many boxes. What a glory Cameron has created for Jack to romp in, all in a rusp 3D realism. It's a very fairy tale about flying dragons, magic plants, worldly hypnotics, creepy crawling, and feral dogs rolled up into a rainforest with a highly advanced spiritual design. It seems, although the scientists led by Sigourney Weaver's top dog have barely scratched the surface, a flow of energy rippled through the roots of trees and the spores of the planets, with the Navi know how to trap into. The center of life is a holy tree where terrible memories and the wisdom of their ancestor is theirs for the asking. This is what the humans want to strip mine. Jack managed to get taken in by one tribe where a powerful Amnosian named Netri takes him under her wing to teach him how to live in the forest, speak the language, and honor the tradition of nature. Yes, they fall in love, but Cameron has never seen a sentimentalist he make it thaw on his lovebirds. They must overcome obstacles and learn each other's heart. The Navis have a saying, I see you, which goes beyond the visuals. It means I see into you and know your heart. In his month with the Navi, Jack experienced their life as the true world, and that inside the crippled body locked in a coffin like transponding device, where he can control his avatar, is as the dream. The switch to the other side is gradual for his body remain with the human colony while his consciousness is sometimes elsewhere. He provides solid intelligence about the Navi defensive capabilities of Colonel Minds Cortez, played by Stephen Lang, the Ramrod head of security for the mining consortium and the movie's villain. But as Jax comes to the see things through Natri's eyes, he hopes to establish enough trust between the humans and the natives to negotiate a peace. But the corporation wants the lead the Navi occupy for its valuable raw material, so the colonel sees no purpose in this. The battle for Pandora occupies much of the final third of the film. The planet's animal life, the creatures of the ground and air, give battle along with the Navi, but they come up against projectiles, bombs, and armor that seemingly will be their ruin. As with everything in Avatar, Cameron has coolly thought things through with every visual tool he can muster. He takes Weaver through the battle like a master tactician, demonstrating how every turn in the fight, every violent death or cowardly act, changing its course. The screen is alive with more action, and the soundtracks pop with more robust music than any dozen sacrifice shoot 'em ups you care to mention. In years of development and 4 years of production, no details in the pic is unimportant. Cameron's collaborators excel beginning with the actors, whether in human shape or as natives, they all bring traffic vitality to their roles. Maroford's cinematography is dazzling as it melts all the visual elements into a science fiction whole. You believe in Pandora, Rick Carter, and Robert Staubach design brings Cameron's screenplay to life with disarming ease. James Horner's score never intrudes but subtly acts the action on, while the editing attribute to Cameron, Stephen Rifkin, and John Raffa maintains a breathless pace that accelerates rather than fatigue. Not a minute is wasted, there is no downtime. Revisiting Avatar 2009. I have had an interesting relationship with James Cameron's Avatar without question. The 2009 science fiction epic was a landmark box office achievement. It took theater by storm, earning its first $1 billion in only 19 days on its way to becoming the highest grossing movie of all time. Avatar shattered numerous records, many of which it still holds today. It was a global phenomenon accompanied by a vast marketing campaign, several companion books, and even its own Disney World attraction. As for the movie itself, there is no denying it was cutting edge movie making. Cameron made the most of his massive budget in creating one of the most visually breathtaking world even put on screen. But it was the story that I had trouble getting past. I ended up having three main complaints: the copy and paste plot, the heavy handed messaging, the over the top characterization. They drew too much attention away from the extraordinary technical work that was Avatar. Over the years and several watches later, I have softened up on my criticisms of Avatar. The most recent call to revelation came after seeing the long awaited 2022 sequel, Avatar The Way of Water. It is a terrific follow up that shined a new light on the first film. I have actually rewatched Avatar three times since The Way of Water released and have seen my perspective and opinion evolve. Yes, I still think it borrowed liberally from other films. Dances with Wolves always come to mind. It's still a bit clumsy in its messaging. And there are absolutely some exaggerated characterizations. But after a lengthy reconsideration, I have come to some unexpected conclusion. For starters, I think using copy paste to describe Cameron's story is reductive and frankly unfair. He is clearly pulling inspiration from a number of places. The idea of a foreign invaders persecuting and indigenous people is nothing new. In this case, it's a humanity who have depleted Earth's natural resources. Now they arrived in Pandora to mine a valuable mineral to send back home. The operation is ran by the Resources Development Administration RTA and oppressive corporation who force their will on the Navi, the blue-skinned humanoid inhabitants of Pandora who live in harmony with nature. Again, the general outline for the story is familiar, but there's so much originality in Cameron's vision, from the world the imagines to the Navi culture has created. Both are key in taking a well used framework and shaping it into something that pulsates with new creative life. You cannot help but be enamored with Pandora and its variety of wildlife, fascinating array of flora, towering waterfall, and floating mountain. It's not only an incredible work of imagination but also visualization. There's never a moment where Cameron and his VFX wizards are not giving us something to take in that's both stunning and transporting. As for the messaging, it's still pretty on the nose with Cameron spelling out his numerous sentences with varying degrees of effectiveness. His views on the environment, big corporation, and even the military are most impactful when he allowed the natural flow of the story to do the talking of him. But there are still lines of dialogue so awkwardly blunt that you cannot help but roll your eyes and laugh. Interestingly, they are not noticeable to me as in earlier viewing, but they are still there. And then there are the characterization in my earliest viewing. Stephen Lang's Colonel Miles Cortez, the RD heads of Scotty, was the epitome of a ridiculously over the top character. He is a military meth head, made even more absurd by Lang's exaggerated performance. Yet over time, I have warmed up to the character and the performance. Yes, he is silly to the point of caricature. But Lang has a blast as the chief protagonist and delivers some really good love. I cannot say the same for Gomnica Miss Parker Selfridge, the corporate head of the RDA mining operation. He too is conventionally over the top, but without a hint of humanity or humor, he is impossible to take seriously. Still, Camerons gave us a number of great characters, including the film's lead. Sam Worthington plays Corporal Jack Sully, a former Marine and a paraplegic sent to Pantera to take part in the Avatar program. It's where scientists generally match a human operator to a Navi body, whether as his human self or in motion capture. Washington is traffic in conveying Jack's frustration, conflict, and courage. Matching his scene for scene in Zoe Saldana as Netri, the daughter of a local Navi clan leader. In many ways, she is the film's heart and soul. In addition to building an imaginative world and compelling mythology, Cameron packs a surprising amount of emotion into his story. And of course, there is the inevitable final showdown, an age of sheer seat thrilling and visually stunning spectacle built around some well developed takes. Yes, it still has some nagging issue, but over the years I have found them to be less pronounced and far less distracting. And even with them, Avatar remains a transporting experience and entertaining blend of old fashioned adventure and technological wonder. Avatar, The Way of Water, what to remember Avatar before watching the sequel. Actor Sam Worthington as Jack Sully in the 2009 epic fantasy Avatar directed by James Cameron. On the summer sneak, Worthington will appear once again as Sully in the sequel Avatar The Way of Water. So you have seen the trending hashtag and trailers for Avatar The Way of Water, and either you are wondering what all the hype is and you are eager to brush up on the event from the first Avatar from 2009. Well, we see you are the protagonist of James Cameron Avatar Sea Oil Nakati Kema, and we are here to help with a recap of the original movie to prepare you for its forthcoming sequel, which has come over a decade in the making. The ending of Avatar finally explained. When James Cameron Avatar premiered in 2009, it quickly became a box office juggernaut. Science fiction fans and filmmaking technology geeks had been anticipating the movie for months, learning all they could about the motion capture technologies used to turn human actors into alien creatures. By the time the movie finally arrived, everyone had heard about how cool it was supposed to be with its high definition, three-dimensional projection, and hyper realistic CGI effect. Avatar soared its way to over $2 billion worldwide at the box office, spawning numerous planned sequels, and the results were cool. The story may rehash some familiar fish out of water culture clash theme from movies like Dances with Wolves, but the stunning visuals and incredible world building allowed audience to look past the repetitious plot point. It will no doubt be long remembered as a groundbreaking technological achievement in cinema, but for as cool as Avatar is, sometimes it gets a little hard to follow. With actors playing both humans and aliens, a subtitled alien language, and heavy action, crucial details might seem a little fuzzy now and then. With more Avatar film on their way to theater as Avatar The Way of Water lands on screen this summer 16, you might need a bit of a refresher. So here's the ending of Avatar Fanny Explain. Avatar takes place in 2154. Humans have depleted the Earth's natural resources and moved on to outer space, colonizing worlds like Pandora, a moon orbiting a gas giant. The main character is Jack Sully, a paraplegic former Marine. His identical twin brother has part of the team of scientists on Pandora who are researching the planet and its indigenous inhabitants, the Navi. Using human Navi hybrid called Avatar, the humans can walk among the Navi, communicate with them, and learn their ways. Jack joins Dr. Grace Augustine, scientist Norm Spillman, and Marine pilot Trudy on their research mission. Of course, the Resources Development Administrating has more in mind. As RD Administrator Parker Selfridge pointed out, the real reason humans are on Pandora is to mine a mineral called anibetnium, which sells for millions on Earth. Colonel Miles Cortez offers Jake a deal: find out all he can about the Navy and he'll make sure Jack gets new legs. But Jack's infiltration into the Navi civilization doesn't go as he expected. He meets a Navi woman named Netri, learns about the planet and the Navi's spiritual connection to all living things and become one of them. Jack and Netri fall in love and become life mates, complicated by the fact that Jack is still a human living vicariously through his Navi avatar, and the fact that he is technically a spy for the RDA. The Battle of Home Tree. Toward the end of Avatar, the RDA ordered the destruction of Home Tree, Netri's tribe home base, because of the rich deposit of unobtainium that lies beneath. By this point, Jack is fully on Team Navi, even though Netri, another member of her tribe, have turned against him after finding out about his spying. Jack has completely changed his identity, considering himself a part of the Navi, embracing their belief, and so he fights for their cause against the RTA. But Cortez's huge military plans, massive guns, and numerous soldiers quickly overpower the tribe, and Home Tree is destroyed. During the battle, many lives are lost, including Netri's father, Eoton, Jack, Grace, and Norm's human bodies are rescued by Trudy, who airlift them and their avatar capsules to a safe location, while their Navi avatars are left in the forest. But during the memes, Cortez shoots them with a bullet, hitting Grace. In order to regain the trust of Netri, the Amtekaya tribe, and their new chief, Tote, Jack mounts and bond with Truck, a huge dragon-like beast related to the smaller banshees. By bonding with his fire-beast home, the Navi both reverence and fear. Jack proves that he is a part of the Navi, that he respects their culture, and he wants to live among them. Jack is embraced by Netri, his mother Maud, and Tostre, and together they make their plans to gather the numerous Navi tribe to fight back against the RTA and evict them from Pandora. Before Jack sets out to unite the Navi's clans, he has one request of Maud: save Grace, still suffering from her gunshot wound. Grace's life is in Navi's hand, as is the life of her avatar. As Nedry explains, all life on Pandora is connected via a biological neural network through the Navi. Consider it more of a spiritual connection than a specific one. The Tree of Voices allows living Navi to hear the memories of their ancestors, while the Tree of Soul is said to be the closest connection to Eva, the guiding force of Pandora that the Navi worship as a deity. The Tree of Souls, Nettie explains, has such power that it can take her consciousness, her memories, and her personality and transfer them through the immersive neural network of Pandora and have them permanently placed into her avatar body so she can survive. This transformation doesn't just highlight the Navi's spiritual belief but also hint at the potential scientific advancement that could be achieved in the future. Grace's body is weak and she unfortunately doesn't survive the process, but before she dies, she assured Jake that she sees Eva, the connections are real, and the world of Pandora is truly a living thing. Eva hears their prayers. The final battle of Pandora includes the RDS soldiers, the many tribes of Pandora, and one final participant, Eva herself, or at least Eva has manifested through the animals and wildlife of Pandora, who come to the Navi defense at the last minute. The night before the battle, Jake connects neurologically to the Tree of Souls and asks that Eva help them on their quest to defeat the RDA. This, more than his bond with Truck, proves Jack has fully embraced his life as a Navi. He used Truck to regain Netri and the other Navi trust, but his prayer to Eva is a private act, showing us that he now believes in the power of Pandora and its spiritual network. During the battle, at a moment when it looks like the Navi might be defeated once again, suddenly a great rumble is heard from beyond the forest. Numerous animals from Thar the planet join the fight, understanding that the RD is destroying their world and their survival depends on their involvement. Not only is the neural connection on Pandora more significant than previously thought, but the creatures of the planet are capable of more complex decisions. Eva has heard you Netri screams as the animal chants the fight, eventually leading to the RD's defeat and the return of Pandora to its original inhabitants. Jack's transformation. After the battle, many of the humans left on Pandora are forced to head back to Earth. Jack, of course, wants to stay, but he cannot really do so while still in his human body. The love between Jack and Netri is strong, but with humans unable to breathe Pandora's air, maintaining their relationship would be rather difficult. Not to mention the fact that Jake doesn't even consider himself human anymore. He has spent so much time as one of the Navi learning and embracing that remaining human would just be a letdown. So Jake asked the Navy to connect his human body as well as his Navi avatar to the Tree of Souls via their natural network. The Navi pray together, chant, and ask that Eva transforms Jake from his human form into his avatar. The closing shot of the film is Jack's avatar opening his eyes urgently, suggesting that the process did indeed work and that Jake can now go on living as a true Navi. The supporting cast. Sigourney Weaver's Dr. Grace Augustine doesn't survive the Battle of Homan Tree, and she was far from the only casualty. During the epic final conflict, Trudy switches side as well, outfitting her fighter plane and faced with Navi's colors, but her plane gets shot down. Amtikaya chief Tasutaya is also mortally wounded in the battle, and after the battle ends, asks Jis to end his suffering. At first, Jack is reluctant to do so, but as Totsy explains, it is a great honor and passes the tribe leadership on to Jack before Jake ends his suffering. On the human front, scientist Norm Spillman survived the battle. Unfortunately, his Navi avatar gets shot and dies, so Norm has to remain in his human form on Pandora from then on. Norm is one of the few humans who is permitted to stay, and he fronts a new and ongoing scientific exploration team, one that has nothing to do with parkouring unobtainium or conquering the indigenous people of the planet. Netri Mother Mort also survived the final battle, and it's she who supervises the ritual at the Tree of Souls to transfer Jack's consciousness from his human body to his Navi avatar. Greedy RDA Administrator Parker Selfridge was only out of one thing: the money and the power that come with dominating the Navi and destroying their land. As a character, Selfridge was the movie embodiment of colonialist and imperialist capitalist interest. He description of the Navi as a fly-bitten savage who live in a tree could mirror any of history's conquering forces as they dominated the indigenous people in various countries across the world. Thankfully, Savage is banished from Pandora by the end of the film, though it is not known whether he has learned any kind of lesson. A much more gruesome fate befalls Colonel Miles Curtis, who, over the course of the movie, becomes a more sinister, violent, and frightening villain than Selfridge. During the final battle, Curtis heads to the Helioja mountain where Jack's human body is connected to his Navi avatar through the port. Cortez tries to disconnect and kill Jack, but his mission is interrupted by Nettie riding her new Thanator. a farcy land mammal of Pandora that looks like a cross between a horse and a dinosaur. Just as Cortez is about to crush Jack with the use of his AMP suit, Nettie launches two giant arrows into his chest. It's after Cortez's death that Nettie meets Jack's human form for the first time, lovingly greeting each other with the traditional Navi saying, I see you. There are a number of ways to read Avatar and how it connects to our own history and possible futures. First, it's easy to see the parallels between the arduous conquest of Pandora and the European colonization of America, Africa, Asia, and other nations. The RDA is financially driven, as were European countries during various imperial separates, gobbling up resources and forcing original inhabitants to move or killing them when they didn't was unfortunately a huge part of the formation of the modern world's aftermath comes in the form of continued racism. The consequences of industrialization and lost civilization of the is particularly evocative of the plight of Native American against European forces, which is why it's often compared to films like Dances with Wolves. There's also the future that Avatar is suggesting. In 2154, humans have basically destroyed the Earth and turned to other planets in a repetitive cycle of environmental destruction. Avatar provides us with a view of what humans used to have a pristine world of untouched, lush landscape and atmosphere not destroyed by pollution, and a planet that is still thriving. There's a sense of entitlement, James Cameron told the Telegraph, adding that humans believe they are entitled to every damn thing on this planet. That's not how it works, and we are going to find out the hard way if we don't wise up and start seeking a life that's in balance with the natural cycle of life on Earth. Looking ahead, Avatar 2, 3, 4, and 5. Avatar was so successful and James Cameron became so immersed in its world building that it's no surprise there are plans for a whooping 4 additional movies. The second and the third installment in the franchise finished filming principal photography in November of 2018 Avatar The Way of Water, and that is hit theater 2022, while Avatar 3, which is rumored to be called the Seed Barrier, is scheduled for the summer 2024. Avatar 4, which is maybe titled The Tolkien Rider, will follow 2026, and the fifth film, rumored to be The Quest of the Eva, is slated for a December 2028. The second film will feature the return of the principal cast of Avatar, including Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, and Stephen Lang. Also joined the cast is Cameron Whitgate Winslet, who started in his other record-breaking film Titanic and is bearing. In fact, it might have been the water portion of the sequel that made production take so long by interfering with the mocap technology used to render the world. As Cameron Hood collided, the problem with water is not the underwater part but the interface between the air and the water, which forms as a moving mirror. That moving mirror reflects all the dots and markers. The principal cast reportedly completed production on their parts of Avatar 2 and Avatar 3 in 2018. And what of movies 4 and 5? Don't get excited just yet. The first two sequels will need to make its worth the studio while at the box office first. As Cameron told Vanity Fair, let's face it, if Avatar 2 and 3 don't make enough money, there's not going to be a 4 and 5. They are fully encapsulated stories in and of themselves. It built across the 5 films to a greater kind of meta narrative. With or without all of the upcoming sequel, James Cameron Avatar was a truly innovative and interesting film, one that plunged audience deep into a new world and heralded a new era of filmmaking. The motion capture technology as well as the use of 3D finality had an impact on the film industry. Although 3D as a gimmick is dying down a bit these days,
motion capture as well as new advances in computer graphic and lifelike animation are more integral to filmmakers than ever. It's those technological advancements that will be the lasting legacy of Avatar as well as Cameron's ability to bring action and heart to some of his most elaborate works. Regardless of how the sequels fare, the original ushered us into the new millennium of cinematic experience. So it's exciting to imagine that's what coming next from Cameron and Pandora when the second Avatar movie, The Way of Water, debuted in December 22. Netri killed Cortez and she helped Jax just as he is on the brink of dying after he gets knocked out of the pod where he is linked to his Navi body. The military forces go back to Earth and a few trustworthy humans such as Jack and Norm stay on Pandora. A ritual at the Tree of Soul is performed and Jack's mind is transferred permanently to his Navi body. When his twin brother is killed, disabled ex-Marine Jack Sully is recruited to aid a mining expedition on the distant jungle moon of Pandora as only his DNA will bond with the alien hybrid body known as an avatar that allows humans to breathe the toxic air with order to infiltrate the Navi. Jack finds himself falling in love with a native called Natri and complication soon ensues. Avatar is unequivocally completed 100% a film that has been percolating in James Cameron ahead of the last 14 years. Since it is not in all probability the film that you had endures when you first heard that the man who directed Aliens and The Terminator was returning to sacrifice with a movie so ambitious that he had to build the technology to make it happen. If you can let go of your version and embrace Cameron's, if you are not, in other words, one of those supplantic internet fanboys types who apparently made their minds up about Avatar before seeing it, then Avatar is a hugely rewarding experience, rich, soulful, and exciting in the way that only comes from seeing a master artist at work. Lest addresses the big question first to use the key phrase so often used in connection with the movie, is it a game changer? Yes and no would be the cop out answer, but it's also the truth. Avatar employs technology necessary to render its largely computer generated 3D world that will give directions, including but not limited to Cameron one heck of the sandbox to play in over the next few years. That's how the game has changed off screen. On it may not be a game changer, but no director to date has built a world of his scale, ambitions, and complexity before an Avatar match as the arrival of Raymond Van Parvent forced Phil the Power Taylor to up his game. Will have rival directors scrambling to keep up with Cameron. Avatar is an astonishing feast of the eyes and ears with shoots and sequences that boggle the mind from the epic floating mountain range in the sky, waterfalls cascading into nothingness to the teeny detail such as a pragmatic shining his new blue and fully operational tires into the sand. The level of immersive details here is simply amazing. And Cameron plunks you straight in, not even giving you time to don water swing in a dazzlingly fast, almost impressionistic opening 10 minutes. We are introduced is no short order to everything you need to know from the next 150 about Pandora's climate and largely deadly population, about Jaxili's situation, about the Avatar program and the ruthless plans of the human invaders. A clear nod to Alien Carter Burke, one of several touches reminiscent of Cameron's earlier masterpiece, and then we are off and running, literally into an action sequence where Jack Avatar barely survives encounters with unfriendly local wildlife that would make Mayers cream his shorts. And there's where Cameron begins the detour from the hell out action phase that many might have expected choosing instead to slay things down over a 3 month time period in which Jack hired and Beer, markedly growing in the live action sequence, immerses himself in the Navi culture and gradually finds himself losing his heart to their ways and practices, and in particular, Zoe Saldana fights warriors. Netri, the lake of a tricking clock plot device here, may deprive Avatar of momentum or drive through its middle section. But it also part of Cameron's agenda. After all, he is also the guy who directed Titanic, and Avatar is not just about spectacles, and Stanford's action through will get both in spades. But a love story, we need hardly be surprised by this. Every Cameron film, even True Lies, have a love story at its core, but the surprise here is how effective Avatar's central culping is. The emotion between Jack and Netri, earthed by Vata's astonishing digital effect, you can safely stow away all the spurious crap about video game style effect or blue jar jars. That is truly next level stuff which doesn't smoother Washington and Saldana under a pile of pixel, but rather tear out and enhance the emotion in their excellent performance. The Navi, each of the home has clear distance feature, no small feet for a clan of some several hundred may not always seems photoreal, but they do seems, and this is crucial. Alive and extremely expressive, helped by the fact that the dead eye problem, which has plagued mocap movies since their inspection, has been well and truly solved. Worthington fully justifying all the hullabaloo about him with a controlled, charming, and physical performance. Both in and out of his avatar may have a significantly Marvin leading man monotone, but an even bigger asset in his soulful eyes, a quality that is retained and magnified in the larger preepers of the Navi, Jake, and Netri's burgeoning love is contained in the intricacies of details in the eyes. A flicker of longing here, a bending of the pupils, or a rolling tear there that further aid the illustration that these conglomeration of ones and zeros actually exist. It's a genuinely engaging relationship. Just because they are alien doesn't mean they have to be alienating. Mind you, despite all the advance and groundwork laid, we might be not quite ready to see two CG characters effectively dry hump each other. That's just wrong. But as much as technology aids and defines Avatar, it's also a love letter to humanity and the glory of Mother Nature. The analogy with the Vietnam and Iraq wars is obvious, but Cameron is siding with the insurgents. Hardly an all American move, but then again, this Canadian is also asking fairly complex questions about what it means to be human. What does it feel to betray our race? Sully is asked, and one pet, but better than Cameron pet has been made. The humans here, Sully, and an assortment of good scientists led by Sigourney Weaver's Dr. Grace Augustine aside are the monsters efficacious, rapacious planet killers. There's never any doubt that Cameron considered the Navi to be more human, fairer of spirit and emotion, more connected to the world around them. At times, and this is perhaps Avatar's biggest flaw, even beyond that bloody awful Leona twist songs which match the end credit, this manifests itself as a new age zippy language and a image that suggests that Cameron is one spark mean away from dropping out man and going all swampy on our ashes. In truth, the big idea here that Pandora is a giant mass of connected energy and emotional sandpasses is not really all the far away from Lucas the Force and works just fine in the context of a sci-fi fantasy, which Avatar undoubtedly is. But there's a fair amount of unintentional laughter to be had from watching hundreds of Navi saving like extras from the Sion race scene in the Matrix Reloaded, surrounding something called the Tree of Souls and banging on about becoming one with Mother Eva. If there's one element of Avatar that the made their mind up praggish will use to mercilessly beat the film with, even more so than the somewhat prosaic flaws. Is it this? But it's hard to imagine even the most jaded and cynical having any issue with the last 40 minutes, in which Cameron uncork the action and show all the young pretenders the base and the emerges and the Von Terriers how it's done. The human attack on Pandora and the subsequent fight back led by Avatar Jake is a largely sustained set piece of quite staggering scale, imagination, and emotional that managed to compress both the truly epic a human attack on a Navi landmark that recalls 9/11 in its devastating imagery and the thrilling inmates as Jack finally faces off against the excellent Stephen Lang's Corches, a scenery achieving bad guy so badass that he can breathe the Pandoran air without a mask. It's a relentless sequence which, while not quite matching the emotional punch of Titanic 3, honky conclusion will still leave you dazed, confused, but accelerated. A feeling that will be enhanced further if you can, and we really recommend that you should catch it in 3D, where Cameron's unparalleled and multiculturally constructed use of the technique expertly enveloped you in the beguiling, exquisite sights and sounds of Pandora, a planet, or to be precise, a moon that throbs and hums and teems with life and energy in three dimensions. It's a word not to give too much away that Cameron clearly fully intended to return to and further explore where he does. Our bags are already packed. It's been 12 years since Titanic, but the King of the World has returned with a fluid but fantastic tour de force that taken on its merits as a film, especially in two dimensions. Warrants 4 stars, however, if you can wrap a pair of 3D glasses around your peepers, this becomes a transcends full-on 5-star experience that the closest we'll ever come to setting foot on a strange new world. After The Way of Water was directed by the great James Cameron. Other famous movies are Aliens, Terminator, Titanic, and many more, and stars Sam Worthington as Jake Sully, Zoe Saldana in motion capture as Natri, Sigourney Weaver as Grace, and Stephen Lang as Colonel Michelle Cortres. At this point, most people should know Avatar as it somehow managed to remain the highest grossing movie of all time, even beating the much anticipated Star Wars The Force Awakens. That being said, Avatar follows Jack Sully, a former soldier, before losing the use of his leg. Jack's brother, a scientist preparing to go to the world of Pandora, dies in an accident, and so Jack needs to take his place since he has a similar DNA structure, which will allow him to link with his brother's intended avatar throughout the film. Jack has to juggle his duties as a soldier and his growing fondness of the Navi people, which become very difficult for him. This is the second viewing of Avatar, my first being a few years after its initial release. I have only ever had it on DVD, so I will not base towards the likely incredible movie theater experience. I am going to judge this movie as it always will be unless we see a limited release in theater. It may seem random for me to review this movie 8 years after its release date and 3 years before the intended release date of Avatar 2. The truth is, I recently visited Animal Kingdom in Disney World, which just opened an additional called Pandora World of Avatar, the portion of the park so simply incredible. Everything was gorgeous and perfect, and the two rides were mind blowing. Of course, this made me want to run home and watch the movie again to see it. It was as good as the park is. In the end, I really enjoyed seeing this movie again. Sterling with that everything raps about in the movie, the visuals I was still blowing away many times upon rewatching. I was still blown, and even using a standard DVD format of the film. The fictional world of Pandora is fantastic. The people are so fascinating in their terrible ways and how they interact with nature and its creature. I also love how the movie almost completely confirmed the existence of their deity Eva, with so many religious paths in fiction and in real life. I thought it was a very interesting choice to base this religion not only on belief and faith.